When Senator Josh Hawley stepped into Pam Bondi's confirmation hearing, it didn't feel like a routine vetting, it felt like a political lightning storm. From the moment he began, Hawley launched into claims of religious persecution, government overreach, and the weaponization of the Department of Justice. He accused the Biden administration of ignoring attacks on churches, targeting pro-life activists with SWAT raids, and even infiltrating Catholic parishes. Bondi's answers? A string of firm yes, Senator pledges to reverse it all. But was this an urgent fight for justice or a carefully staged performance to inflame political tensions? The exchange that followed would ignite fierce debate, far beyond the walls of that Senate chamber.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, welcome. Congratulations on your nomination. I'm so glad that you've been nominated, as we discussed when we had the chance to meet.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to work with you as a State Attorney General for a number of years, and I'm delighted to see you here today before the committee. I look forward to your confirmation. You will be confirmed. I, too, have taken note of the number of times you have been asked about weaponization of the Department of Justice as if it was a theoretical possibility that might happen in the future. One of my colleagues on the other side said, weaponization may well occur under your tenure. We all know that weaponization has occurred like we've never seen before in American history under this administration. And I want to get even more specific. In the last 4 years, this administration has carried out an unprecedented attack and campaign against people of faith. If you look at the numbers, we've never seen anything like it before in American history. It has been one of the most disgraceful chapters in the history of the Justice Department and in the history of the FBI. And I hope that you will reverse this and do right by every American citizen, including especially people of faith. Let me give you some specifics. After the Dobbs case was decided by the Supreme Court, over 100 pregnancy care centers and over 300 churches in this country were attacked, vandalized, firebombed. Do you happen to know off the top of your head how many prosecutions Merrick Garland's Justice Department brought in those cases?
I do not, Senator.
It's a stunning number. It's 2. Hundreds of churches, hundreds of pregnancy care centers. And I might just add, these pregnancy care centers, the attacks on them, which were violent, which were gruesome, were egged on and encouraged by rhetoric from members of Congress, including members of this body, who have said that pregnancy care centers aren't real medicine, that they're not real doctors. They have legitimized these attacks. And the same thing was true of churches. And this Justice Department couldn't lift a finger to defend these Americans. But at the same time, they used legislation, a law known as the FACE Act, to prosecute at least 53 different pro-life demonstrators, including people like Mark Houck from Pennsylvania, to whom this Justice Department sent a SWAT team to his door in the early morning hours. He has, I think, 7 children. In the early morning hours, an FBI SWAT team shows up at his door to take him into custody and prosecute him. By the way, he was acquitted. This kind of outrageous, disparate treatment has to end. So here's my question to you. Will you protect churches and pregnancy care centers when they are targeted for violence, when they are targeted for intimidation, when their members or parishioners are threatened with violence or other acts of illegal behavior?
Yes, Senator.
Will you stop the disparate treatment of Americans on the basis of religious faith?
Yes, Senator.
Will you stop the deliberate persecution of pro-life Americans for nothing more than their pro-life beliefs?
Yes, Senator.
Will you ensure that nothing like the Mark Houck case happens again, that Americans do not have SWAT teams arriving on their front doors with armed weapons to terrorize their children and their spouses, only in the end, of course, to have the case lost because there was nothing to it? Will you put an end to that kind of deliberate intimidation of the good American citizens on the basis of their religious beliefs?
Yes, Senator.
I'm glad to hear you say that because we need it. We need it. Ms. Bondi, we need a new chapter at the Justice Department, and we need it quickly. And I'm glad you're committed to it. Now, I also have heard you've been asked about your comment that you thought that in some cases we need to investigate the investigators, the ones who were bad. You know, I have to say I'm glad to hear you stand by that. We need to do that. You need to do that. And I'll give you another example. I'm sure you've read about this memo, which I now hold in my hands. This memo that was developed by the FBI field office in Richmond, Virginia, 23rd January 2023, targeting Catholic parishes for spying, for recruitment of infiltrators. I mean, the memo goes on and on and on about the FBI's plans to put assets into Catholic parishes, into choirs. This is an unbelievable assault on Americans' First Amendment rights, and we only know of it because of a brave whistleblower who came forward and released it to us. And I will tell you, I have never been misled and lied to like I was by the current Attorney General and the now former FBI director when they sat right where you're sitting now and told this committee, oh, we don't know anything about it. Oh, only one field office was involved. It was the single work of a single field office and a very few individuals. As it turns out, that's not true. Multiple field offices were involved. Multiple individuals were involved. Under your leadership, will you put a stop to the use of FBI or Department of Justice resources to try and recruit informants and spies into Christian churches or any church or house of worship in this country on the basis of nothing more than faith?
Of course, Senator.
Let me just say this. To our knowledge, no one who was involved in the writing and performance, execution of this memo has been disciplined or fired. Will you conduct an investigation like you talked about, Ms. Bondi, that will get to the bottom of abuses like this? And to be clear, this is an outrageous abuse. It is an outrageous abuse. One of the worst abuses of Department of Justice and FBI authority in our history. Will you conduct an investigation to find out who signed off on this, who approved it, who advocated for it within the Department of Justice? Will you open the books on these abuses so that the American people can have confidence in their DOJ?
Senator, and I think what you're talking about is the ultimate weaponization, what we've been discussing all day. If I am confirmed as Attorney General, one of the first things I will do, there'll be many, but I will personally read that memo, and if Mr. Patel is confirmed, discuss it with him right away.
Fantastic. And will you work with this committee and our relevant subcommittees? I'm going to chair a subcommittee called the Crime and Terrorism Committee. We're going to do our own investigation into what happened here at the FBI and the DOJ. Will you work with us as you discover the nature of these abuses, and as you put a stop to them, will you work with us to make sure the American people get all the facts and this never happens again?
And Senator, yes, I look forward to working with you and the Democrats. I would think this is something that we can all agree on both sides, that this should not be happening in the United States of America, and work together on it.
That's fantastic. Let me ask you one other question here in my just few seconds that are remaining. This memo targeting Catholic parishes repeatedly refers to as an expert source a group called the Southern Poverty Law Center. Now, the Southern Poverty Law Center has a long history as an anti-religious group that has repeatedly gone after conservative and religious organizations, called them hate groups, called them sometimes terrorist groups. They're cited in this memo. They once infamously, the SPLC called the Family Research Council a terrorist hate group, and an armed gunman came into their lobby and opened fire. Will you put a stop to the use of the SPLC as an official source for any Department of Justice memorandum or finding?
That will be one of the first things we will look at as well, Senator, and report back to you and the committee.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi.
Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General and a loyal Trump ally, sat at the witness table facing the Senate Judiciary Committee. The hearing was officially about evaluating her qualifications for a senior DOJ role, but Hawley's opening set the tone. It was going to be less about credentials and more about political warfare. He welcomed Bondi warmly, praised her record, and then pivoted sharply to his central theme. The Biden administration, he claimed, had already weaponized the Justice Department against people of faith. Hawley painted the picture in stark, emotional terms. In the 4 years since the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision, he said, over 100 pregnancy care centers and more than 300 churches had been attacked, vandalized, firebombed, desecrated. He asked Bondi if she knew how many prosecutions Merrick Garland's DOJ had brought in response. When she said she did not, Hawley delivered the number with theatrical outrage. For him, this wasn't just a statistic, it was proof of selective enforcement, a symbol of how the DOJ was failing to protect religious Americans. But Hawley didn't stop there. He turned to the FACE Act, a federal law designed to protect access to reproductive health services. According to him, the law had been twisted into a weapon against pro-life Americans. He singled out the case of Mark Houck, a Pennsylvania father of 7. Hawley described how a SWAT team arrived at Houck's home early in the morning, terrifying his children and hauling him away only for him to be acquitted. To Hawley, this was tyranny in action, and he pushed Bondi for a promise that such incidents would never happen under her watch. She agreed without hesitation. The drama escalated when Hawley produced a leaked FBI memo dated January 23, 2023. The memo, from the FBI's Richmond field office, allegedly detailed plans to place informants inside Catholic parishes and choirs. Hawley called it one of the worst abuses of DOJ and FBI authority in history. He accused DOJ leaders of lying to the committee by claiming it was the work of a single office and a few individuals when in reality, he insisted, multiple field offices were involved. Bondi pledged that if confirmed, she would personally read the memo, investigate the matter, and stop any such practices. Hawley wasn't done with the memo. He pointed out that it repeatedly cited the Southern Poverty Law Center as an expert source. In his telling, the SPLC had a long history of targeting religious groups, even labeling the Family Research Council a hate group, a move Hawley linked to a violent attack on the organization's headquarters. Would Bondi ban the SPLC as a source for DOJ documents? She promised to review it immediately. From there, Hawley shifted to a different controversy, the October 2021 memorandum from Attorney General Garland regarding threats at school board meetings. He claimed the memo was part of an orchestrated effort by the Biden White House and the National School Board Association to smear concerned parents as domestic terrorists. He said the memo was still in effect, even after the NSBA retracted its letter and admitted fault. Bondi admitted she hadn't read it, but again promised to do the right thing. Hawley urged her to rescind it on her first day in office, if confirmed. The tone briefly changed when Hawley raised an issue close to home: the Radiation Exposure Compensation Fund. This federal program helps victims exposed to nuclear radiation. Through government actions, Missouri, Hawley's state, still struggles with radioactive contamination in its soil and groundwater. He pressed Bondi to administer the program fairly, ensuring victims got the compensation they deserved. She said she was unaware of the severity of Missouri's problem, but promised to look into it. By the end of Hawley's questioning, Bondi had agreed to investigate the FBI memo, review the SPLC's involvement, consider rescinding the Garland School Board memo, protect churches and pro-life demonstrators, and administer the radiation fund fairly for Hawley's supporters. It was a list of commitments that signaled a major course correction for the DOJ. For critics, it was a carefully staged exchange that offered more political theater than substantive oversight. Outside the committee room, reactions split sharply along partisan lines. Hawley's base saw a fearless defense of religious freedom and parental rights. His critics saw selective outrage and omission of key facts. Many legal experts pointed out that the FACE Act prosecutions he decried often involved clear cases of harassment or obstruction, not religious targeting. The vandalism cases he cited were harder to prosecute because perpetrators were rarely identified. The FBI memo, while poorly worded, had been quickly rescinded and never became policy. And the Garland memo, far from criminalizing dissent, focused on credible threats of violence against school officials. But in the hearing, none of that nuance appeared. Hawley's questions were sharp, his tone relentless, and Bondi's answers were short and agreeable. It was a dynamic built for headlines and viral clips each. Yes, senator serving as a soundbite ready for social media. The strategy was clear: frame the DOJ as hostile to conservative Christians, portray Bondi as the one who would fix it, and use the hearing to reinforce a larger Republican narrative about government overreach. That narrative is powerful because it taps into deep cultural divides. In the GOP's telling, federal institutions aren't neutral. They're agents of a woke agenda that seeks to marginalize traditional values. Whether it's churches under attack, parents labeled extremists, or pro-life activists facing aggressive prosecution, these stories create a sense of siege among conservative audiences. The details may be contested, but the emotional impact is undeniable for Democrats. The hearing was a warning. Accusations like these, repeated often enough, can erode public trust in institutions, regardless of their factual basis. When agencies like the DOJ or FBI are cast as political enemies, their ability to function impartially is undermined. And in an environment where conspiracy theories already spread easily, such rhetoric can fuel dangerous polarization. This is why the stakes go beyond one nomination hearing. If the weaponization narrative gains more traction, it could justify sweeping changes to the DOJ and FBI should Republicans gain more power. Those changes could range from cutting budgets to replacing career officials with political loyalists. Moves that would reshape federal law enforcement in ways that could last decades. At the same time, there's a political risk for Republicans. Overreaching with constant grievance politics could alienate moderate voters who want stability over perpetual outrage. If every hearing becomes a battlefield, the public may tire of the noise and look for leaders who focus on solving problems, instead of scoring points. What happened in that committee room wasn't just about Pam Bondi's future at the DOJ. It was about the future of how Americans see their justice system, whether as an impartial guardian of the law or as another pawn in a partisan war. The real question is whether this was oversight in action or simply another chapter in America's endless culture battle. And that's where you come in. Was this a stand for justice or just political theater? Tell us what you think in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories shaping our country.